everyone, welcome to another episode of Cubicle Crashing TV, where we explore the freedom-based mindset and living and working on your own terms. So if you've been watching my channel, you know that I love interviewing people and real stories of real people that have taken the leap and what they do now and how can they help you if you're in that stage of your life making that choice for your life. So today I have Leigh Wasson. Thanks for joining me, Leigh.
Absolutely.
So Leigh's from Chicago in the United States. He got laid off about a year ago, so he's still kind of fresh into this new world of experimentation and obviously taking your life in your own hands. And I wanted to invite Leigh here to talk a little bit about his story and of course share the things that you experienced when you kind of took this leap. And obviously it wasn't easy. It was probably a lot of fear surrounding your world and the unknown, which a lot of people that are listening right now are experiencing. So I want to know a little bit more about how you overcame that, how you finally made the choice, why did you make that choice to come to Bali, and what life is like for you now. So let's talk a little bit about the day you got laid off. That would be a good story to start it.
Totally. So about a year ago, I was working in Chicago at an industrial design firm, and I was in the marketing department there. And yeah, I got the call. Basically, your services are no longer needed, and it was unexpected at the time. And at that same week that happened, I got another call from my girlfriend at the time.
Right.
It was like, we need to talk.
Oh gosh, like the triple whammy thing. Probably a third thing happened right after that. In some way.
Yeah. So it was kind of one of those like points in your life where I think we tend to make identifications with labels, right?
Yes.
So I think the first thing that a lot of people use, just in introductions, what do you do? Who are you? Mm-hmm. Well, I do this. This is my job title. Mm. So I think when we have that taken away from us, and also on a personal level, like in a relationship, like my identification of who I was my job title and boyfriend. Yeah. And kind of overnight, both of those were gone.
Right.
So I was left with this question of, well, who am I? What is it that I am? And that week after, I knew what I was supposed to do, right? I knew that I was supposed to look for another job.
Right.
But for some reason, I didn't do that. I'd felt in a way that I'd been tricked somehow, because I'd gone through the entire high school. I went through college and the internship and the accreditation program.
You played by the rules. You did what you're supposed to do.
Everything. Yeah. I got to the job, the health insurance and the 401k and all this, and then it was gone. But it was like, in a way, it hurt. But at the same time, it was like, well, I'm still me. I still wake up the next day. I'm still here. So what is it that makes me happy? What is it that I want to do? And I took some time to basically like go into that question, what is happiness, and explore that.
And did you think that this being laid off and then obviously the second, punch in the face of like your label of boyfriend being taken away from you, did you kind of have this identity crisis, so this panic first about holy shit, who am I without these things? And then was it some sort of kind of almost a relief in some way that like, okay, so now that I'm kind of starting from scratch again, and it may be the opportunity that you've been looking for the whole time, but maybe not realizing it until it smacked you in the face.
Absolutely. And in a way, definitely the panic, but also felt like kind of the eye of the storm. Like I felt like, oh, this was going on, but there was an element of stillness and like calmness in there. Right. And I did, I think, maybe what a lot of people do and start reading a lot of the great authors, like for example Alan Watts. Right. And there's one quote that really helped me specifically. He says, I came from nothing once before. What's to say I can't do it again? Yeah,
absolutely. We have a huge love for Alan Watts together.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
He's the man.
I know.
Yeah. So you obviously woke up, you're like, okay, logically and what I believe is responsible is obviously to go find a job. Make, whether it's, forget the girlfriend thing for now. Right now I've got to take care of myself financially. Did you have a lot of money saved up at that point, or were you okay?
Fortunately, I was okay. So I was able to take some time and just kind of ask those questions, right? But I set the rule for myself that I didn't want to become dependent on other people. So I set the rule that first, you can't get a job. And second, you can't ask your parents for money. Right. So I had no idea what it is that was going to develop into, but those were my conditions that I gave myself.
Okay. So what happened after that? So when you made a choice to go, okay, I'm really not going to get a job. I can't see myself in a job right now, and I'm not going to ask for financial help with my parents. What was the next step for you after that?
Well, I was very fortunate and lucky that I happened to call up a friend of mine in high school who had started an SEO company.
Okay.
So he was working in LA at the time with some really cool clients and helping them basically get their websites ranking in Google. And I just called them up because I was doing a little bit of that in what the marketing I was doing before, but I was focusing primarily on social media. So we just kind of chatted about what it is that we were doing, and it sounded like there was some overlap there because some of his clients had been asking him about social media.
Right.
And it wasn't really anything he was familiar with. So we decided to just partner up on a client and kind of took it from there, and, it grew from there.
Right.
But at that point, I'd been out of work to the point where I'd gotten down to the last $500 in my checking account.
Right, yeah.
So I was close to that, but for some reason I wasn't freaking out. I don't know why, because it wasn't like me at the time at all. Like I've always been somebody who needed to have the next step like planned out.
Yeah.
Planned out. And it was the first time in my life where, it sounds like corny, but I just kind of trusted that it was going to work out.
And do you think there was something that you were doing daily to kind of cause that courage to be a little bit more present in your life? Because I know you and I kind of talk a lot about mindfulness and being present in the moment, and sometimes, you know, doing particular practices that keeps us from thinking so much and just being, you know, and feeling how we feel in that moment, because thoughts are constantly coming to our brain and sometimes they're not very helpful. You know, I always say not every thought in your head is God talking. You know, a lot of them is like, you know, other parts of you that's just noisy, you know. So do you think that there's some daily things that you implement in your life to cause that effect, which is this different reality now where you're not having anxiety and panic over this unknown situation?
Absolutely. I think I'd reached a point where, and I don't know if you've experienced this as well, but the feeling that I can't hear myself think.
Right.
And for me, what absolutely changed, I won't say it changed my life, but it changed my relationship with what life is, was when I started to practice Zen meditation, which is a specific type of meditation that's very rigid. There's a certain way that you sit, there's a certain way you hold your hands, and a certain amount of time that you do it. And for me at the time, I needed that kind of structure, going from a completely structured life, like my entire life, completely structured, to the first time having zero structure whatsoever. So just having, even though it's very small, I started with 7 minutes a day and then kind of built up to 20 minutes, half hour, an hour. But having just that one structure that unconditionally, this is what I do every day, helped me structure, just on a very practical level, helped me structure my day, but it also helped me get out of my mind. Because the future only exists in the mind, right? This element of worry, but also hope. It's not necessarily a bad thing.
Sure.
But it's also a fabrication in a way, right? We've never actually experienced the future. Right. When the future comes, it comes as now. And that's something that I was able to understand through reading about meditation, but there's kind of this back and forth with knowledge and practice. So you'll kind of, be reading about something in meditation, and you're like, oh, that sounds cool, but then, maybe when you're practicing, you're like, oh, I get it now. And sometimes it'll go the other way, where you'll be experiencing something, and you just like kind of hit you, but you don't really exactly know what it is, and then later down the line you'll read about it. Right. And you're like, oh, that's what that was.
Putting two and two together.
Exactly.
Well, there's a whole thing about putting theory into practice, right? We can read all the books on whether it's meditation or obviously a lot of the big book for digital nomads, or obviously the 4-Hour Work Week with Tim Ferriss. Like when I first read that book, I didn't actually get it. It was like 6 years ago, and I was like, who are these mystical creatures called digital nomads? And like how these are probably this kind of life is probably for someone who's like a programmer or someone really tech related. Can't be someone like me. I can barely do my own WordPress site. It's not a life for me. I didn't really get automation. I didn't get outsourcing any of that stuff because it didn't apply to my life at that moment in time. But I think then years later, when I actually read it again, and when I was ready for it, and then ready to kind of implement a small thing, whether it's just research about, is there a place I could live and work out of that isn't going to be as expensive as Vancouver, where I was at the time, and then researching that almost kind of like gave me a little bit more of a different reality, that it does exist for one, but also my intention focused on it to try to find these answers for myself, which now makes it real for me. Now this theory thing that Tim Ferriss has created, I can imagine it even more clearly now because I've done something to honor the theory and practiced it. Because I think that's a lot of times people get trapped in that. They read all kinds of books, whether it's about self-development or business strategies, and then they can't, if they don't apply some bits of it, they can never kind of see the momentum of how that kind of is in your life. And I think that's the same for meditation. You can think about it all the time and just sit there, but until you actually really incorporate it as a commitment, practice daily, you can't really reap the benefits of seeing what could change in your life, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's interesting that you bring up the 4-hour work week, because I had a similar experience. I read it 4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
And it always had kind of been in the back of my head, like, I want to do that, but I don't quite know how it applies to me. Like, I'm not going to go sell, supplements online and like do an automated business or anything.
Right.
But in the way that I kind of cracked the code was through consulting, and just teaching, right? Mm-hmm. So I think there's a resistance in a lot of people to not want to teach because they don't feel like an expert.
Right. Yeah.
And one way that I like to think about it is, so you just think about like school, right? So you've got kindergarten teachers all the way up to professors in college, right? And there's a good chance that obviously the kindergarten teacher would not be able to go into the college class and teach that curriculum to that kind of advanced level. But at the same time, that college professor would have no way of teaching the kindergarten class either, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not necessarily what level of expertise you have. It's more so knowing who it is that you're helping.
Sure.
Right? And oftentimes, even like in the kindergarten class, oftentimes the best teacher is actually the first grader.
Right.
Because they've just been through it, right? Right. So there's no excuse for not starting to teach, whether that's blogging, whether that's video, whatever outlet you want. And there's something that I think when you start teaching, and I'm sure you've experienced this as well, is that you learn so much more yourself when you start teaching, right? Yeah,
totally.
So that was huge for me. I know that in the last year of consulting, I learned more about the practice of marketing than I did in the last 10 years. Right. Kind of waiting to be told what to do.
Yeah, because you're hired for a specific role. You kind of have boundaries upon what you do on a daily basis. So it's harder to explore kind of different aspects of how you want to do that task, even because you're under someone else's clock in a sense. Right. And it's very different when you are a freelancer or a contractor, and then of course as an entrepreneur to have that ability to adjust as you go. Yep. And that's really beautiful, because I thought about this about my business the other day, and I think, because people ask, what's the best thing about running a business, and it's the freedom and all the kind of basic things that you see externally, right? I'm in Bali, I have a good life, but more to me personally actually is the ability that I wake up every morning and go, if I don't want to do that anymore, I don't have to. Yeah. Which is like, you can't put a dollar amount on that. Like freedom of choice, and then also it's like, if I wanted to really focus on expanding or being more, building my mastery on a particular direction, I can also put that energy to that and let it grow, instead of focusing on all these other things of I should do that rather than I want to do it. And I think that choice was a huge that was probably the biggest value for me as a human, not just as an entrepreneur or anything that people see me as in the public world, but on a personal level, like for me to be able to adjust as I go, and have that being my decisions, and I know why I'm doing it. It's like I can't even put words on it, that value that's given. Yes. So one thing I wanted to ask you, because I know we met kind of through Twitter in a way. We never met in real life, and somehow we got connected somehow. I don't know, probably some hashtag or something like that out there. And then I discovered you were here before when you used to run or help run TEDx Ubud, right? Here in Bali. And we connected, and you said, I'm coming back, and then I kind of took a read in your profile. And I love that what you say on your bio is like, I'm not an expert. I'm here to kind of share what I want to share, and you take what you need, but I'm going to continue sharing. And I'm glad you brought up the whole thing about starting now on sharing something that you already know, because there's someone that's a step behind you. There's someone that's 10 steps behind you, and you may not feel you're Tony Robbins or you're Deepak Chopra or any of these kind of big guys that you think know everything, but you know something enough for someone else that's in that level to digest your stage, actually. They may not get Deepak Chopra, actually, but it will get you because you're in that stage where they need you the most. So what have you found out about yourself in terms of what you can share to the world and apply it to your career? So Twitter obviously is something that's in your world right now that you help with, and that's in a way a vehicle of some sort, whether it's Facebook or Twitter. You've chosen Twitter, but there's something that you do with Twitter, obviously, that feels more meaningful for you than just using it as a platform. So how have you incorporated something that is you as a human, or something that you're curious about or interested in, and apply it to a business like helping people with their Twitter accounts?
That's a really good question. I'm fascinated by this balance of automation and authenticity. I think today, more than ever, we have all of these new tools that can be automated. And it brings up this question, okay, where does this line, how can we leverage this incredible power of automation, but how do we still remain authentic in the connections that we make, right? So this is what I'd like to apply to business strategy as well. And if you think about the natural world of say, like, take a rose, for example. Each rose is unique, completely unique. There's no two that are the same. However, the root structure that created that flower is identical across the board. So in a way, systems, when you have them going, create the space for spontaneity to occur. And that's really what I'm interested in creating through Twitter. So there's ways to automate the process of connecting with people, with like-minded people,
right?
Who are interested in the same topics and maybe share the same struggles. And there's a way to connect with them kind of in a mass way, but then at the same time connect with them directly one-on-one.
Right.
So this is what I've kind of figured out one way to do it, and I've been helping other businesses do it as well.
Yeah. And do you think that's brought you a little bit more satisfaction in the work, because you could have easily gone into kind of traditional Twitter marketing and kind of done what everybody wants to hear or everybody thinks they have to implement in some way? Do you think adding that flavor of, like you said, authenticity in communication, because obviously you care about that stuff, you read about that stuff, whether you're paid for it or not, and has that been important for you to incorporate something that you would do on a regular basis about communication and connection and authenticity, and use that with Twitter? And building, then it becomes almost a unique product in itself.
Absolutely, and there's a way to, with authenticity. There's a way to be. It's not just about kind of this idea of finding yourself and finding your passion, but finding what other people are struggling with, and put yourself in a place that can resonate with what they're working with, right? Yeah. And before, kind of in traditional advertising, it was really just guesswork. Like what. Ultimately, it comes down to what are the desires of the people that we're talking to, and there's kind of the 5-word question in copywriting. This is like the go-to question is, what is it that we're really selling? Like, what do we really sell? Yeah. And that always gets to the deeper desire or struggle that people are asking. Yeah. So if we can use these tools to uncover that will help us become more authentic. Kind of at scale too. Right. So we're kind of taking the guesswork out of what's going to resonate with my audience, what's going to attract them, because, well, we can just ask. Yeah. And I mean, how we approach it might be just our perspective 5 steps ahead. And sometimes if we're serving the people who are 5 steps behind, we forget how they feel, their pain points at that very moment in time. And if the languaging of how we're conducting our sales pages or websites or about pages isn't connecting to that person at that stage of their life with that problem or their perspective of that problem, you kind of miss out on that resonation, which I think is why people buy online these days. It's like they haven't met you, they don't know you, they just found you somewhere. So you have a very short amount of time to have that connection built right away, and then they can scroll or click on more things to find out more about what you do. And that's actually, using social media, because we are in a social realm these days, right? Everybody and their dog is on Facebook. I know what people are struggling with. I know, their dirty laundry that's being aired out in the public world, which is great in a sense for businesses or even anyone that's looking for business ideas, in the beginning stage of, I don't know what I should create, is that all the answers are kind of there in the social realm, because people are complaining and talking about it really publicly. And I invited you, obviously, to do a speaking hour over at the retreat we run, right? At Turn Point 9 to Thrive. And these guys were kind of in the beginning, like, I kind of know my skills. I know the direction of where I might want to apply these skills. But how do I know what can I create that is needed in the world? Well, stop guessing, because you're in your own head and you're in your own world, and you're trying to obviously spread your message globally. You'll have to go globally to find out what the hell everybody else is thinking and what commonalities there are in the issue in that world. So could you use Twitter? Because I do that, but what are some tips you could give people about
let's say someone's still in a corporate job, figuring out, they have some vague direction of what idea they might have about a business, but how could they find out more about the pain points? How could they use Twitter to connect with people in the global world to find out more about what can they solve in this problem in the perspective of these people?
Well, I think what social media allows us to do, which is completely different than a traditional business model, is that how we used to do business is we build a product and then try and market it. Right. So kind of a build it and they will come mentality. Now we're able to reverse that. So we're able to start with our audience first. So I'd recommend before you like take the leap and like quit your job
and invest all that money into a business.
Exactly. Is start building an audience.
Yeah.
And same thing if you're, in college, a freshman in college. I think every college student should leave college with 100,000 Twitter followers, 10,000 email subscribers, and know how to write a kick-ass sales page.
Right.
So when you graduate, that's your product launch.
Yeah. You already have the platform of people that said, I give you permission to speak to me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you do it right, they will tell you exactly what it is that they want.
Yeah, cool.
Right?
Yeah.
So you have to ask questions, but also just based on the engagement, because everything is built on engagement and numbers, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of businesses are confused, like, okay, well, how do we use all this data? There's all these numbers floating around. Well, use that to guide your strategy. So, for example, say you want to write a book, right? What I would do is start on Twitter, start connecting with people that are like-minded. So people are using similar hashtags, people who are following maybe influencers in your specific field, right? Yeah. And just see what content is getting the most engagement. At the end of the month, you can just sort all of that. There's a tool called Buffer that I would recommend for doing that. So you can schedule and sort all of your best performing content. Take the top 3 there, turn those into a blog post.
Right.
You already know that that's going to resonate with your audience because they told you.
Right, yeah.
And then from there, at the end of the next month, you can see what of your top blogs are getting the most comments and the most traffic.
Right.
From there, you turn those into a book. Those
that's a great little shortcut.
Right?
Yeah.
And then in that way, the entire time while you're writing your content, building your book, you're also growing your audience. So instead of having to go to a publisher, now you have your audience that you can market the book back to, and you're almost letting your audience write the book for you because they're telling you, not because you say what do you want to know about, but it's they're told you by their engagement, right? Their actions.
Yeah. I love that because there are such shortcut ways to do it now with technology and to utilize it properly. Then it's the amount of time and hours you spend on Twitter is kind of useful now instead of just chatting and have no goal in mind or anything like that. I think it's a great communication tool if we use it for good and use it to bring something for us as well and get some direction because it's better to find out from the horse's mouth what people want and need, and that's going to spark up some new ideas and direction whether you like it or not actually, and give you a little bit more focus on a direction to focus on because they're already telling you, which gives you some validation. Because we need the courage every time we create something. It's like, well, are people going to buy? Do people really want this? And this is probably a great little shortcut to start with for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I want to end the interview with one thing that you can, so a lot of people watching this video will be people in that transition stage, right? Probably how you were when you were walking down the street and go, all right, I've got to make some choices in life right now. Do I get a job? Do I not? Maybe they're not laid off, but perhaps they're in that kind of like crossroad, like, do I stay another year here and save up money, or do I, what can I do to kind of take the next action to change something for myself this year? So what if someone's in that position of making a choice, trying to make a decision and getting noisy in their heads, what's one thing that you can advise them to do that can be implemented right away that can ease that journey a little bit more for them?
And it's difficult to say because I would say go back to the fundamentals. Go to books like How to Write Well, like Breakthrough Advertising, like Ogilvy on advertising. These guys will show you how to write simply, and right now it's a writer's world. Everything is written online. Everything is tracked and measured by the written word. So that's even before building your audience, right? Is in a way I needed to unlearn everything that I learned about writing from college and from the business world. Traditionally in academia, we're not rewarded for clarity, we're rewarded for kind of argumentative writing and like making the other guy look wrong.
Right.
That's not how you actually sell anything. You sell by communicating as clear and concisely as possible what the desire is, tapping into the desire that people want, and then offering a solution for what can be the remedy to that desire.
Right.
And then specifically saying that this group, my group of products, can offer that promise of delivering the solution to your desire. And more specifically, this single product can do this. And even more specifically, this product at a given price can do this. So I'm not going to say go quit your job or don't quit your job. I don't think I'm in a place that I would feel comfortable saying that. But I would start with the fundamentals of communication.
Yeah.
Of going and studying copywriting, really.
Yeah.
And knowing, because those are gonna be the tools that will arm you to be able to communicate with your audience authentically, but also kind of in a way that motivates, right, and moves people. There's a quote from David Ogilvy that I absolutely love. He says, when it comes to copywriting, there's two types of writers in the world. There's poets and killers. Poets see an advertisement, or we could say a tweet, a Facebook update, as an end in itself. Killers see it as a means to an end. If you're a killer and a poet, you get rich.
Right. Yeah, I like that. So how can people find you on the online world? Of course, you've got your own Twitter handle, and if they were interested to learn, so if they are in their first stage of launching and wanting to get the word out or trying to connect to the right audience to sell the product or even tweak the product to make sure that it is something that's needed, where can they find out more information about what you can talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that you bring that up, in that I think, as I kind of said before, people think about social media backwards, that you have a product and then you start your social media campaign.
That's right. Yeah.
Start the other way. Start building your audience first. Start really get a handle on how Twitter works and how you can find people first. That's primary. So the way to find me is my Twitter is Leigh Wasson.
Right. We'll put it on the blog page as well.
Awesome. Yeah. And the website that I work with is supremeoptimization.com.
Awesome. Perfect. All right, well, thank you for joining us for this episode. And if you want to find out more about Leigh and what we talked about, we'll have a bit more details on the video blog page, which you can you can click on the link below this video to get to the website and read more about what we talked about today. Thanks for joining us, and thank you for joining us, Leigh.
Thank you so much, Lydia.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so very much for watching Screw the Cubicle TV, and don't forget to subscribe below to get all the latest cubicle crashing content on how to quit your 9-to-5 and create a life and business on your own terms.